right, folks. This is second time recording today. I am recording this and not live streaming it because a couple reasons. One, I just got the news that Geno Smith got traded to the Las Vegas Raiders, reunited with Pete Carroll, and I was like right on the verge of a nap before my show. So I'm already on take two of trying to record this. The first one started out very bad. Also, all of my favorite like Seahawks content creators are live streaming right now, and they're gonna crush me if I try to compete with them. So this will come out, and I will probably be at my show tonight, and that's fine. Um, Shocking news. I mean, to a degree, right? Like the Seahawks have been very adamant this offseason that Geno's the guy. Geno will be the starter. This is kind of the same playbook as what they did with Russell Wilson, I will say. So I'm not completely shocked. It's not like so jarring. Like I was actually in Colorado when Russell Wilson got traded to the Broncos, and it was a crazy day to be there and a day where they all celebrated, and I did the very opposite. I mourned the departure of Russell Wilson, and I'm once again in a hotel room. Just put my shirt back on, and you could see the bed in the background that I was just recently sleeping in. So, first off, the like third round pick from the Raiders. I saw speculation that it would be their number 68 pick. I don't even know as I record this. I don't think we even know that it's necessarily a 2025 second round pick. But let's see. Let's get to this. Let's see. Raiders draft picks because I think they have two. I believe they have two second round or two third round picks in this year's draft. So this is going to be annoying to try to find this. God damn it! Come on, folks. Come on, folks. Okay. They have number 73 and number 68. So both pretty high third round picks. Are you happy with this compensation for Geno Smith is a question. I mean, it's almost a second round pick. You were never going to get a first round pick with a guy with that salary, 1 year left in his mid 30s, coming off of, like, frankly, not a great year, especially statistically. And I think made mistakes that made preventable mistakes. Also, I mean, obviously he had a lot working against him, but made a lot of preventable mistakes. It was never going to happen. You were going to get a first round pick. Maybe you could have hoped to get a second round pick. This is very close to being a second round pick. It's a very high third round pick. I talked about it in the DK episode, like it's sexy to be around earlier, but like when it's the difference between, let's say, Oakland's number 68 pick or Philadelphia, I think, has the number 64 pick, and it's technically a second round pick. The actual value difference isn't that big. I mean, if it's a future pick, there's a big difference because it has potential to be the 33rd pick or the 96th pick or whatever. And so the range is greater, but like in this case, if it's 2025 pick, then even if it's their number 73 pick, I'm fine with the compensation. Frankly, I would have not been completely upset if the Seahawks would have just released Geno Smith because of how much money they can save against the cap. And I think it's really important to remember, by the way, if you ever hear anybody say, well, it's not my money, of course it's not your money, but they have a finite amount of money to spend and it rolls over from year to year. So it's not like use it or lose it. They can roll over money into future years and then really go for it 1 year. And this frees them up to do that. And I think so Geno they're going to save $31 million in cap space. So that'll get them, according to the over the cap calculator, to $63 million. Were they to still trade DK Metcalf? So whether or not this affects DK Metcalf is, to me, a question of how much do you believe DK Metcalf really wanted to get away from Geno Smith, and how much is it really wanting to play for a contender and wanting to be at a place with a more stable quarterback situation. Which, by the way, I mean, I think a lot of people would have said today that the Seahawks had a somewhat stable quarterback situation, and obviously DK Metcalf was correct. It was not as stable as some of us might have thought. They certainly have more money to pay DK Metcalf now, but if they were to trade if they were to trade DK Metcalf and not take any salary back, they would be at right around $81 million in cap space. We have reached kind of like they've done more with the cap than I could have kind of ever possibly imagined they would do. I'm trying to get to the cap space rankings. So if the Seahawks had $81 million in cap space, they'd end up being ranked. They'd have the third most cap space of any team because the Raiders right now have $80 million in cap space. That'll obviously go down, and the Seahawks would have $81 plus million, and that would be the third most. It means they have the most to spend in free agency. They have the most to spend to revamp their quarterback position, which is the next part of this, which is like you see people freaking out. I've seen people freaking out already. Like, first off, people are going like, the Geno haters. The Geno haters have got their way. I was never a Geno hater. I will say that I am invigorated by offseason moves like this. I think this is the most exciting time of the year for me personally because there's so much possibility. And yeah, I'm like, this is my shit. I'm into this. I'm so excited to see what the Seahawks are going to do with their quarterback position, especially because, by the way, I don't think they're going to go out and sign Sam Darnold, would be my guess. I could be wrong. I mean, I know the Seahawks have been interested in Sam Darnold in the past. I could be wrong, but my guess is that they go kind of cheap. I don't think that Sam Darnold is like a massive upgrade over Geno Smith. He might be a better fit in Clint Kubiak's system, which, by the way, that's a thing that's still a problem for DK Metcalf, right? It's like he's still, regardless of what amount of money the Seahawks have to extend him, he's still not a great fit for Clint Kubiak's system. What I think the Seahawks will do, if there's anything that they've done in the John Schneider era, it's they've never painted themselves into a corner with a quarterback who had significant question marks. They traded for Charlie Whitehurst. They signed Matt Flynn. They drafted Russell Wilson. They extended Russell Wilson, which was probably the closest they ever got to painting themselves into a corner, and maybe did paint themselves into a corner for a couple of years, to be honest with you, and then ended up trading Russell Wilson away. But I don't think they want to go back to that with a guy like Sam Darnold. That's my guess. I have no inside information, but I don't think that they are dying to return to having a quarterback that feels betrothed the role. You know what I mean? That feels like he should have say over the personnel on the roster even. So what does that do for you? I think they're going to draft a quarterback. I mean, that might be the understatement of the century, but like I think they're probably going to draft a quarterback in the first 3 rounds. I think it's going to be my guess would be it's going to be Quinn Ewers, and my guess is it's going to be in the 2nd round, which is probably a round early of what anyone wants, where anyone wants to draft Quinn Ewers. But I think that it's if you really believe in that guy and he's the quarterback, the same reason you're doing stuff like taking Kenny Pickett at whatever, I think it was 18 that the Steelers took him. It's who was the guy? I mean, actually, Will Levis didn't end up being the guy, but I mean, even Shedeur Sanders or Daniel Jones, like these guys go really early because it's such an important position. Arguably the most important position in sports, certainly the most important position in football. And if you got to get the right guy, if you have to go around early to take the right lottery ticket, if you got to go around early, I'm fine with that. I mean, maybe they like Jackson Dart. Maybe they like Quinn Ewers enough to take him in the 1st round. I would love to see him at least make it to 50. But yeah, I mean, maybe they the year they drafted Russell Wilson, I remember hearing reports, and I'm sure you can go find these, that they were like drooling over Ryan Tannehill. And I loved Ryan Tannehill as a prospect. He never really panned out the way that I thought he would, but like I thought he was an incredible prospect, and they also loved Wilson. Was that the same year or was that the year after? But my point is like, I think they want flexibility at that position, which I think means they're not going to go sign Sam Darnold to a 4-year, $160 million deal that forces them into like a financial problem. So I'm going to float some names that I think are not going to be exciting. I think Drew Lock. By the way, I'll say this. I even think it's possible they go into this offseason with a couple options on the roster and no defined starter. Why would you? You don't have to go into this offseason with a defined starter. You've made the bold move. I guess the only thing about Darnold to track back slightly is if the price comes down. I don't think you could get him for this, but if you could get Sam Darnold for 3 years, $90 million, which is probably the kind of extension that Geno Smith is looking at, my guess, I might consider it at that point. 3 years, $90 million with like reasonable guarantees. I mean, I also like the idea, by the way, of Kirk Cousins on a league minimum deal because Atlanta's going to be paying his whole salary. I don't mind that at all. Yeah, I think the Seahawks have a lot of options. The other guy I would say is I wouldn't be surprised to see Drew Lock return to Seattle. And I wouldn't be surprised if I would be surprised if Sam Howell was the starter week 1. That would be the biggest surprise to me. My suspicion is they won't end up, they got lightning in a bottle when they found Russell Wilson and he crushed the whole preseason and became the starter right away despite the fact that they had signed Matt Flynn. That's not a common story that a 3rd-round pick does that or anything short of like a high 1st-round pick does that. So I think that they're probably going to work through some veteran options. I don't think Drew Lock has a ton of leverage, but he obviously has supporters in this organization. Unless, there's a ton of stuff right now about how Pete Carroll was the guy that was the strongest advocate for Geno Smith to stick around. Maybe Pete Carroll was the guy that was the strongest advocate for trading for Drew Lock. Maybe that's true. I don't think so. That's not my memory of the conversations around him, but I would not be surprised to see Drew Lock get a chance to become a short-term starter. I saw a guy float the idea of Gardner Minshew, and as much as I know people like Gardner Minshew, I just don't I just don't think the Seahawks are gonna I just don't think they're gonna go down like the road where they have to sign someone to any decent salary. And Minshew has no connection to the coaching staff, I don't think. The one guy that I thought might be an option in Oakland or in Las Vegas that I might still be because Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator there. And he could be there. The Raiders have a lot of money to spend. So I thought Marcus Mariota might make his way into Chip Kelly's loving arms once again, and maybe he'll be there as a backup. But yeah, that was kind of what I thought would have been kind of a poetic reunion. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I like I said, fresh off a nap, no caffeine after the nap, and an abbreviated nap. God damn it, I'm tired. I'm trying to catch up on my sleep. Now I'm gonna have to sleep more tonight. Man. Justin Fields is always going to be out there. Obviously, I think like Zach Wilson would be interesting. Did Zach Wilson ever cross paths with Clint Kubiak though? Yeah, I would not be surprised to see the Seahawks go into camp with like a young quarterback and 2 or 3 veterans competing for the starting job, but 2 or 3 mid-priced veterans. Not even mid-priced, like pay them like backups. I suspect the Seahawks are going to use this opportunity to be cheaper at quarterback and try to go back to the early stages of the Pete Carroll, John Schneider era where they designed their whole team around minimizing what you needed out of a quarterback. And they successfully did that to a degree by they made Geno Smith a viable NFL starter, which was nobody believed in him, myself included. Nobody thought that Geno Smith stood a chance of being the starter or being an effective starter. Some people would argue on like how effective he actually was, but yeah. So that's my prediction. My two, if I was gonna say like my desire and where my desire meets what I think is most probable, I would say somebody along the lines of Drew Lock or Kirk Cousins, someone who has a connection to the team or the coaching staff would be the guy who I thought had a better shot at it. I'm certain that John Schneider's got a full dossier on Sam Darnold. So if it ends up being Sam Darnold and it ends up being at a reasonable price, that's great. Obviously, we don't know what the price is going to be. I think it'll be very dependent on what the price for Sam Darnold is. So if it's $390, I think that's like maybe a slam dunk. And if it's $160 with a huge chunk of it guaranteed, I think that the Seahawks just historically, and we have a lot of history on this team. You got to remember, like Geno Smith, they let him go out to the market. Like the contract he's on right now, he signed with the Seahawks after becoming a free agent. So I don't think the Seahawks are scared to walk the plank a little bit and get out a little bit on the diving board. How many analogies can I butcher on the way to this point? Which is like, I don't think you may want certainty. It's so exciting to me that we have no idea. We have no idea who's going to be the starting quarterback week one. That guy's almost certainly not on the roster right now. And it's going to be very dependent on, what does Sam Darnold cost and what do these other guys cost? Is Justin Fields like in their plans, in their thoughts? Is he regarded highly by the Seahawks at all? Is he going to end up back in Pittsburgh? I mean, the craziest thing, obviously, and I think there's one more year of guaranteed salary, but would be if Russ came back. Send Geno back with Pete. Russ comes back to Seattle. Do they have a matchup this year? I don't know. But, I mean, I don't know that that's even realistic. I mean, I don't think it's realistic. I'm qualifying that too much. I don't think it's realistic. I'd welcome the chaos, though. That would be a hell of a story. And I'd be interested to see if you could get Russ with some humility that he has to have acquired in the last couple of years. The guy goes from, he's a Super Bowl champion, dating one of a super attractive pop star. He's a full celebrity, to a guy whose career feels like it can't stop bottoming out. Could he come to Seattle and be a serviceable guy and ride off into what should have been a Hall of Fame career and what's probably, on the fringes of the Hall of Fame at this point? Yeah. And then, Kirk Cousins has connections to Clint Kubiak. I talked about it earlier in the offseason. His best years were when Clint Kubiak was in Minnesota. He's going to cost veterans minimum to whatever team signs him if the Falcons do decide to release him, which I think they will probably do. And he has a full no-trade clause, so they can't trade him if he doesn't want to. And he has no incentive to provide Atlanta with any salary relief, especially after what seems like him being blindsided by them drafting Michael Penix. So, now if the Seahawks have, 4 picks in the first 100, I think you'd want to see an offensive lineman and a quarterback, maybe a receiver even, which leaves you with that other pick is who do you go with? An edge? Edge is somewhat strong in this draft. Interior defensive line is, I think, relatively strong. Tight end is supposed to be very strong. But, yeah, I think it's thrilling. This kind of thing is thrilling Do I think Geno, by the way, am I a Geno hater? Absolutely not. I think he's been fantastic. He's been so much better than I thought he would be. And his story is so great. Like, it's a redemption story on an NFL career. A guy that had all the hype in the world coming out of high school, who had a very good college career, and then by most reports, like, completely botched the pre-draft process, has a tumultuous start to his career, ends up having a teammate break his jaw, which we can see some of the temper that may have led to that. You don't want to be the guy that's blaming the guy with the broken jaw, but like, I think we can all see that Geno Smith has a temper and talks some shit, I'm sure. Which, by the way, so do I. I'm not judging him, but like, a guy, and then becomes this kind of like traveling journeyman, gets a couple tries, and then is like, seems like he's going to be a career backup. Like, it seemed like he had a unlimited pass to be Russell Wilson's backup in Seattle, and then Russ gets traded, and Geno takes every opportunity. Yeah. The Seahawks had no reason to give Geno Smith every chance. They traded for Drew Lock. In that trade, they've had opportunities to draft guys. They traded for Sam Howell. And Geno Smith has consistently just beat those guys out. It's a great story. He's probably going to go make $100 million and live his twilight NFL years in Las Vegas with one of the greatest coaches that's ever coached. It's a great story. I wasn't rooting against Geno Smith. I wanted him to be a playoff quarterback. I wanted him to take the Seahawks to the playoffs. And I do think he has like tremendous physical skills. My problem is not with that. My problem is that he's in his mid-30s, and I don't think the Seahawks are going to be a Super Bowl contender in the next 2 years. And all the money they spend on him in those 2 years, I mean, and this is like, I want the Seahawks to win in those 2 years regardless. But if Geno Smith is a mid-tier quarterback, if he's the 18th best quarterback in the NFL, that means the Seahawks are going to win more games and have worse draft picks and maybe have a harder time replacing him for when they actually need a guy. But they also are going to spend $100 million on him that could be devoted to other players, other positions, other talent. So, invigorating day, very exciting. I genuinely actually hope it doesn't mean that DK Metcalf is now a fixture on the team. I hope that the Seahawks are careful with DK Metcalf, that they either trade him or, pressure him into an extension that isn't going to screw the team, especially because I think there's some question about how productive he'll be. And how exciting. I don't think it's going to be Russ, but anyway. All right, I got to go. I got to get dressed and go to this comedy show. Thank you all for listening, the very few of you that do, and tell a friend. And I'm going to have some good shows next week. I have some interviews lined up, so check those out. Subscribe, all that shit. Bye.